they're going to be helpful later on for sure.
The next one is, what are some tips to help with time management in asynchronous classes? I definitely suggest making, I'm not sure if this works for everyone, but for me personally, what really helps is making a like checklist of what I need to do in a week, like per course kind of stuff, and then just kind of like tick them off because it's very like satisfying sometimes when you're like, yes, I finished everything I need to do for this course this week. And two, it just kind of helps you keep in mind like what you actually need to do, because especially with asynchronous classes, they kind of like forget one or two assignments sometimes. And so yeah, that's my suggestion. David?
Yeah, definitely have that list of everything you need to do. I like to use like a calendar, and then I have like all my assignments like on the days that they're due, so I can look ahead and be like, okay, these are the ones that I have left. These are the maybe I should start them around this time. But I know one thing that a lot of people struggle with is sort of going to class, because in synchronous classes, like it's a certain time you have to go. If you don't go, like you miss it. But when they're uploaded, a lot of University of Waterloo's courses are uploaded videos that you can watch on your own time, which is sort of nice because you can watch it whenever you're free, at night, in the morning, whenever you work best. But it's really easy to sort of procrastinate and be like, oh, I'll watch it later. Oh, it's an hour. Like, I don't have an hour now. I only have half an hour. I'll do it later when I can do the whole thing. Um, I find really that it's really good to do like ASAP. Let's say the morning it comes out, try to find time to do it then, or maybe the next day. But really, the sooner the better, because once they build up, once you have like two or three, then it's really hard to watch them all and not just to skip ahead. So I'd really say try to watch those as soon as you can if you have a bit of free time.
And to add on David's point, there's a lot of assignments that's like on the same week that's built on the material during the lectures that you kind of have to watch. So the earlier you kind of go to these classes and kind of learn the material, the better that you can like do on assignments and like kind of just give yourself time to kind of understand what you're trying to learn.
Yeah, the next question sort of builds on that. Any tips for managing time? Um, what do I like to do? I like to, again, like we said, have a really organized, well, I guess not, it's not even that super organized, but just have a list of all my assignments and stuff. I try to, right at the start of term, I look through all my classes. They have their, what's the word called? It's some document that like lists out all the assignments and all the
Oh, the
um,
syllabus.
grading criteria. Syllabus, yeah, that's the word, thanks, sorry. Go through that, find all the due dates, put them all on my calendar so then I know, okay, this is when everything's due. And then in terms of managing my time, one big thing is I tend to procrastinate, like working 5 minutes and I'm like stuck on a proof and I'm like, I don't want to do this. Like, wonder what's happening on Instagram. I don't know. I throw my phone away, like put it out of reach. And I find that where you can like focus. There's a technique called the Pomodoro technique, where essentially you like focus for, I think it's like 25 minutes and you focus and that's all you do, and then you take a 5 minute break and then you like repeat. So I find that's like pretty useful because you're not like working for hours straight, you have some breaks, but it also like you have considerable chunks of time to really focus. So I'd say, yeah, try to throw away your phone, focus on work, and then you can have a little break.
And going on that topic, I'd suggest to like also schedule in breaks so that you don't burn out. Because I know for me, like at the start of the semester of first year, I was like, I'm gonna do all my assignments and I'm gonna try to like kind of race through stuff. And then you kind of like burn out really quickly if you do that. And so you kind of need to like make sure to, schedule in breaks so that like you can actually, keep up the schedule to last through the semester. Because it's not like a sprint, it's more of a marathon, especially after midterms. So yeah, that's my suggestion. Yeah.
So just building on that, I just realized, I know sort of intuitively you think the more free time you have to work on homework, the better grades you'll get and the better the easier it will be to complete all your assignments and study and all that stuff. So then a lot of people sort of try not to do any extracurriculars, don't do any clubs, don't do anything else. They just focus on school. I've actually found, sort of intuitively, the more time I sort of spend doing extracurriculars, other stuff, the easier it is to really sort of focus on school. Because let's say you have the whole evening to do this 1 hour assignment. You're gonna sort of procrastinate, be on your phone, whatever, sort of get to it later. But let's say you have, I don't know, you have a soccer game at 9 p.m. and then you want to get to bed by 11 or 12. I don't know. Like you have to do the assignment before the soccer game. You can't do it during it, right? So like it forces you to focus. So that's what I've found throughout my university career. I really tried to do a lot of extracurriculars, different volunteering stuff, different fun things, sports. It's not stuff that I really enjoy doing. And I've actually found that it's helped me get better at time management because it forces me to actually put aside time for work and to really work well during those hours. And it also has added benefit of doing a bunch of fun stuff. So I can answer more questions about that if people have. But I'd say definitely don't try to ignore everything else in your life and focus on studying because I really, in my experience and people I've talked to, it hasn't really helped. It doesn't give that much extra free time and it just makes it a lot less fun. Um, yeah, I don't know if you have anything to add on that, Eric.
Yeah, I think I kind of find the same thing as well. Like this last semester was probably my busiest, but I also like found that it's the one that I kind of focused the most on. So yeah, it's a good point. Try different stuff. There's a lot of full clubs you guys can kind of join. Yeah, maybe orientation next year. We'll see. Yeah, I guess next question would be, this might be different for individual classes, but do they let you keep the assessments after they're graded? So this also depends on the assessment. So I'd say for most of the assessments, like you kind of, at least for my COVID year, I'm not sure about what it's like during like offline or in person. Um, but like for me, I have all my like assignments that I've done myself, right? But like I still have like my final and stuff like that. But in terms of the grades and stuff like that, I for the finals they usually don't actually return them. They don't even tell you the grade sometimes that you get on finals. Like it really depends on the professor. And yeah, David, do you have anything to add to this? Like
Yeah,
maybe what it's like in person? Go ahead.
yeah. Oh yeah, true. I guess in person, usually you get your midterm back. Usually you can see it online. All that information is online. And then you can get assignments and stuff. You see all the feedback, you see the grades and all that stuff. But like Eric was saying, usually for finals, you don't actually see the final. Um, you can request to sometimes where I'm like, oh, I want to look at my finals, see what I got wrong and right. But usually, again, they don't really release the final grades. If you really want to know, it's usually not that hard. You just calculate all your assignment and midterm grades, and you look at your final grade, and then you just do the math, get the part that's missing, right? Just some algebra. But usually for midterms and assignments and everything else you can use that to study, go over stuff you got wrong, ask professors. So they're usually pretty good about that. Cool. Oh, okay. What can we do to secure a good co-op job in the first or second work term itself? Okay, co-op job questions. So, co-op, I'm sure Waterloo, many people are in co-op. Um, it's definitely a big part of the Waterloo experience. There's a lot of work that goes into applying, working on your resumes, working on interviewing, stuff like that. And definitely can be very stressful because there's a lot of people like upper years that are working at like big companies in California, big tech companies and stuff. And it can be stressful when your first co-ops don't seem too impressive. I would say really like you have usually in computer science 6 co-ops. Don't stress too much about it. Like we're ahead of most universities that don't have co-op. They start getting their jobs after they graduate. Like we're way ahead of that. Um, Definitely you want a good job, but I'd say okay, stuff that'll help. Work on your resume. The university has resources to work on your resume. I find those sort of iffy because they're sort of general for all jobs. Something that really helped me in first year would be talk to upper years. Show them their resume. Be like, oh, okay, how can I improve? How can I make this more of a tech resume? A lot of upper years will have their own sort of website. You can literally look them up or look at their LinkedIn, stalk them. That's what I do all the time. Find their resume, and I'm like, oh, okay, I like this part of the resume. I like this part. you steal like parts that you like and stuff. Like obviously you don't steal, but I'm talking about like formatting and stuff like that. But yeah, talking to upper years, and usually the Math Society has a lot of good resources for that. Other than that, for your resume, I know in first year I had no computer science experience. I barely knew how to code. But you put stuff like extracurriculars you've done, cool clubs you've worked at, been at, contests you've won, contests you participated in, cool projects you've done, maybe even like in class. They don't have to be extra. Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, okay, first off, for the resume critiques, there's a lot of like different, for one, like CSC or CS Club, as well as like a lot of other clubs. They usually host a lot of like resume critiques. I think there's something, I think Tech Plus does that. There's a lot of different clubs. You kind of just need to like kind of search them up. There's also like at hackathons, there's also a lot of resume critiques. So that's my first point. There's a lot of opportunities. You just need to kind of go find them and then kind of just be like, roast my resume, and then it'll be good after a few of those. And then my second point is, yeah, like David said, the first one and second one is like kind of hard, but you kind of just need to put what, like, you know, without lying, of course, like what you've actually done and a lot of stuff, and try to like, yeah, put stuff that are like extracurriculars is totally fine, because a lot of the soft skills, like communication, is really important to kind of see. And one kind of suggestion I'd say is like kind of expand where you're looking at. So, like David said, you know, maybe even search on LinkedIn or external job boards is a good idea instead of just going on Waterloo Works. Because I know that like a few companies, like for example, Shopify no longer kind of like post on Waterloo Works. So going to external job boards is a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I know, I guess we can sort of focus on co-op for the next little bit because we have a few what CS people usually land in their first co-op and side projects that's sort of related. Just talking about job boards externally. If you want a US co-op, I know a lot of them they posting like really early, like soon for summer co-ops. So if you're interested in that, I didn't know that until like second or third year. But I'd say like look on these websites, look at these companies. I know like Google, Microsoft, I think Amazon too, they all have programs specifically geared to first and second years. So I'd look into those. Um, just look on their websites. They usually have some good information about that. Um, in terms of yeah, what usual first year jobs? What would you say, Eric?
Sorry, you cut it there for a little bit. Could you
Oh,
repeat that?
so we have the question: what jobs do CS peeps usually land in their first co-op? What would you say is a general?
Mainly web dev, if I'm being completely honest. It really depends on your experience as well, kind of stuff. Because I know there's some crazy first years who have like 12 years of coding experience and they've already done like a couple internships beforehand. But I'd say for the majority of people, yeah, it's usually web dev. At least like all of my friends have all gone into web dev. And there's also, how do you call it? I'd suggest kind of, you can also kind of just dive into what you're kind of interested in, if that makes sense. So like if you want to do side projects, do them in kind of what you want to kind of maybe do a co-op in and stuff like that, as well as like apply to co-op jobs that yeah, like you might be interested in. For example, like one of my friends, instead of just going to web dev, she's like doing specifically UI UX stuff. And like it's, yeah, kind of just depends on the individual is what I'm trying to say, but mainly web dev. Yeah.
Yeah. You definitely you probably so you just your group just came out of your first co-op, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, you definitely know better in terms of that. I think my first job was it was with the government.
Mhm.
Just I don't even remember. I was like doing some data thing. But I wouldn't be too preoccupied. Like first co-op, it's usually you can be less picky. Like you sort of do whatever jobs are available. You can focus on your later co-ops to really be picky and choose which company, what type of stuff you want to work on. But I think the first one's great just to get experience in general. We had, well, let's talk about maybe side projects because that's sort of related, and then we can, oh, you mentioned that, and then we can get back to the socializing question. In terms of impressive side projects, I think Eric mentioned hackathons. I'm not sure if everyone's sort of familiar with those because I had no idea what a hackathon was until like midway through my first year. Essentially, most universities host one where it's sort of 24 hours straight of just like coding. Um, I don't know, it sounds really fun to some people, sounds less fun to some people. But essentially what it is, it's a weekend, you go there, they have a bunch of workshops where you can learn different coding languages, different tools, different cool, you can use different hardware stuff. I know they have a bunch of like VR things or like, I don't know, just Amazon Alexa, stuff like that. But it's really cool because there's a bunch of like university students all together. You all like sleep at the university, you like try to code all night and you try to make some sort of project in 24 hours. So obviously it's not going to be a good project, right? Usually, pretty much always, it never works. But you just like have fun, you try different things. They have a bunch of like fun events. And it's mostly you meet cool people. You can network. A bunch of companies are there. Get a bunch of free t-shirts. Half of my closet is free shirts from hackathons. I'd say definitely apply to all of them. Like apply to them, and then you can like decide. Okay, I want to go to this one. I want to go to these. But they're a really fun way to meet people and make projects without having to spend a lot of time focusing on like some side project.
Yeah. I'd suggest as well, like if you guys really want to be crazy, you can search up on this website called DevPost. Maybe I'll type into the chat. But basically, they have like a lot of free hackathons or like hackathons you don't have to apply for. They're all free. They should be at least. And like I have some friends who just like every weekend or every other weekend, they just go to a different hackathon. And I don't know how they do it. They say they kind of sacrifice school, which I wouldn't necessarily suggest. But yeah, like they really enjoy it. So yeah, that's kind of like something you guys can do. Like if you guys don't know where to start searching for hackathons, DevPost is probably the best place to go. Yeah, and also talking about impressive side projects. For me, I personally like to do kind of a bit of a longer side project. So like I would work probably like half an hour every night or something like that on just kind of some kind of project that I'm personally interested in, and kind of just work on that myself. You don't really get as many side projects out, and sometimes it is very easy to lose motivation. So I'd suggest kind of like maybe even looking for a kind of team to do it, as well as like CSC or CS Club is also hosting something called Project Program that you guys can look into. It's basically like a month-long hackathon. So watch out for that. Yeah, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I just noticed I just checked the chat. Make sure to post your questions in this. But okay, we had a question about socializing in first year. I know we talked a bit about we talked about doing clubs and stuff. I found that was the best way to socialize. Like you meet people in residence, but during COVID it might be a bit hard. We're not sure what the restrictions will be really like throughout the year. So what I tried to do, like, there's gonna be a club fair. Might be virtual, probably will be virtual, where you can see all the ones. Like in first year, I signed up for like 15 of them. I was like, oh, this seems remotely interesting. Let me put my name down. And I only ended up going to like 5 or 6 like events from like 5 or 6 different club events, and maybe like I stuck with only a couple of them. But it's really cool because there you never know who you're gonna meet from what program, from which year, and there's a bunch of really cool. It's a big people here. It's a really big university. So I'd say really anything you're remotely interested. There's like I don't know. For some examples, I did Acapella. A bunch of great Acapella groups here. I joined Quidditch. It's like from Harry Potter, you know, the sport. And now I'm like one of the captains on the team because it's just like so fun. There's all these intramurals. There's like hockey. There's soccer. There's video game clubs. There's anime clubs. There's music clubs. There's all these like really cool stuff, and you're gonna meet a lot of really cool people. Have fun. So I definitely say really go out and try to do those stuff. Like I said, it doesn't really stop you from actually doing your homework and stuff like that, but it really makes the academic experience a lot better. And really, yeah, put yourself out there. I know it's scary. It's really intimidating meeting new people. You're in a new environment, but really everyone else is in the same spot. So go out there, make friends, and try to socialize. Even though it is intimidating, it's really definitely worth it.
Yeah. Nothing to add from my side. I think that's really good.
Okay,
Um,
cool. Yeah, no, that's just, I don't know. One thing I really know is university, like in high school, there's a bunch of people, you have friends, you get along with them, but there's a lot of differences between you and people. In university, there's so many people. There's going to be a lot of people with very similar interests to you. So you're going to meet like lifelong friends because they're so close. So like similar. Yeah. Sorry for that rant. Okay. What's our next question?
Um,
When do you start joining clubs? Quick question. Yeah. Club fairs should be soon. Usually it's like 2 or 3 weeks into university. You're gonna see get emails and postings and stuff about that for sure. Um,
Ooh, there's a question about research assistantship. I have no idea on how to answer. You know how to
yeah,
answer that?
I do not.
I
Okay, Nathan Kwan. Yeah, sorry, Nathan. I don't have any experience with that. Let me write down your question and
It's
we
a good
can get
question
back to you.
though.
Or maybe Xiaozong, can you okay, Xiao is answering that. So we'll move on to the next one. Side projects.
I'd
Oh,
say in general though, like it's never too early to apply for stuff. Like like chances being like you might not get it, but it's like never too early to apply, you know, to kind of understand the process and stuff like that. So yeah. You can probably even ask your professors like directly. It's just like, I want to go into research. How do you do that? Yeah.
may definitely for research, it's good to know professors. So again, office hours, stuff like that. That's how you get to know them. Internships
Right.
part-time during study term. I want to know if I have enough time. Do you want to take that, Eric?
Yeah. So I will say like, oh, and this is actually one of my students from the math ready. Anyways, sorry, that wasn't funny. Yeah, I'd say for internships slash part-time, I know a few people like at my company that I did last term, I did have like there were a few part-timers who were doing their 1B with us. I will say that um like they did have time to do that and study, but I'm not sure like how well their kind of time management was. I know that like if you were to do that, you'd have to like really manage your time well. You might not have time for other stuff that you might want to enjoy, kind of like, you know, do extracurriculars. My suggestion isn't necessarily to do this, but if you really want to do it, then it is possible kind of stuff. Yeah. I'm not sure, like David, do you have something to add or?
Personally, I try never to do any classes during co-op or any co-op during classes. I class during co-op. If you want to do part-time during school, I'd say make sure maybe try to do at least one term of school, just school, see how well you do, see how well you're able to keep up with the workload, and then maybe also like one co-op just by itself, maybe. And then see, oh, do you think you'd have enough time to do both at the same time?
That's a good point.
Because I know it might be a lot to chew off like right at the start, and then you might not enjoy either of them, and then it might get burnt out. So I'd say make sure you really understand how good your time management is, and then decide if you want to do that.
Next
Cool. We have the
question.
question. I heard sometimes you end up being long-term friends with someone in the same course and co-op sequence, spend most of your time with them. Is this true in your case? Cool thing about CS is that compared to engineering is that we can do a bunch of different courses with a bunch of different people. We have a lot of electives. So I've met a ton of people throughout all my different courses. Some of them you see multiple times, you become closer with them. But also like in terms of co-op sequence, people change their sequences all the time. So sometimes they're in person there with you, or sometimes they're on co-op when you're in school. So you really meet a lot of different people. And then you can sort of choose who you spend more time with as friends and stuff like that. So I'd say there's really a lot of people that you meet, um, and yeah, they don't necessarily have to be in the same class or co-op sequence as you for you to remain friends with them.
Yeah. Like for me, especially during the pandemic, I didn't really meet anyone through my classes. So like for me, it was mainly from like the extracurriculars, like for example, like volleyball intramurals that I kind of like stayed friends with people. So like I'd suggest like if you really want to make long-term friends, it's not necessarily through courses, because to be honest, not everyone wants to be in every single course. But in intramurals and like extracurriculars, it's usually people who like actually want to be there. And so they'd kind of be in the same situation as you, and that's the kind of people you can make friends with.
Yeah, sounds good. Cool.
Do you
What's
have any?
accomplishments in math? Yeah, any accomplishments you have, put on your resume, guys. Like when people look at your resume, they want things that'll make you stand out, make you seem like more impressive, cool stuff. So yeah, definitely put cool accomplishments you've had. If you've won awards, if you won medals, if you won first place and stuff. And like, even cool things you've done, like if you participated in like stuff. I like put like hackathons or stuff I've participated in, or I even put like just like interests. I put like I said that I like play Quidditch and like do Acapella, like all these stuff like that. I can attach my resume actually in the chat if people have questions or anything.
Yeah, I should put mine too, although I haven't edited it in a while.
Cool. As you put yours, and I'll keep talking, and then we'll switch. Where and how can we join clubs? Okay. I'm still not sure how much is going to be like in person and online. But like I said, there'll be a club fair within the first 2 or 3 weeks. And then usually there, they talk about, okay, like if you have to join a Facebook group, if they have in-person events on campus, if there's like Zoom calls or stuff like that. But there's definitely going to be that club fair, and you'll get a lot more information there. Cool. I'll get to the next one. How would you go about selecting job positions to apply during the co-op application period? Okay, yeah. So usually for the first cycle, you get 50 applications. You can apply to 50 jobs. The cool thing is on Waterloo Works, that's the internal job board at Waterloo, you get to see how many people have applied already to that position. So you can sort of estimate, okay, I'm in first year, there's this Amazon job, 500 people have applied. I don't know, maybe I'll apply, but my chances might not be as high as some upper years. So maybe I'll focus on these other jobs that might be less in demand. Um, Sometimes I choose based on location. Like I'm from Ottawa. I wanted to be back home for my first co-op, so I applied to only Ottawa jobs. Or you can apply to ones. A lot of them are looking for junior developers, like they want first or second years. Other ones want third or fourth years. You can look at that. You can look at what type of tools they are looking for, like what type of languages they want you to know. I'd say in first year, maybe I'd say like 30, 35 of those 50, I'd say apply to things that you think that you could definitely get. You meet most of the qualifications. They seem interesting. Maybe 10, I'd say um, stuff that just seem really cool, that you think it might be a bit of a stretch, but who knows? Like a lot of people get interviews for things that they don't think that they would, but are really cool. And then maybe 5 of those, like really like reach ones, like go apply to these big companies, apply to Facebook, apply to Amazon, apply to Microsoft, because who knows? Um, yeah, you're not going to get in if you don't apply, right? So send it, and you have 50, and then there's more rounds later. So you'll have plenty of applications. I'd say for sure send a few to those big companies. Why not?
Yeah. I posted my resume, by the way, in the chat, so you can take a look at it. I'm not sure if it's good, to be honest, but it's a resume. All right, cool. What was the next question? Sorry,
No
I
worries. The
lost track.
next one would be talking about side projects. Oh
Hmm.
yeah, from Mithiel.
Um, oh, there's a question about they're trying to drop physics 111 and replace it with a different course. Any bird courses you recommend? I'd suggest the most bird courses are the ones you're actually like interested in. So yeah, like for example, like someone might think English is a bird course for them because they really love writing, but for me, I wouldn't necessarily be a bird course for me kind of stuff. I took Phil, my 2 electives that I kind of took during first year was Phil 101, which was a lot of reading, but it was pretty interesting to learn about a bit of philosophy. And the other one that I kind of suggest everyone to kind of take if it seems interesting to you is called PAX 302. It's offered in winter term, so that'd be your 1B term. and it's called Math for Good and Evil. It's a sociology course about like math and the implication of like the different ethics and stuff like that. And yeah, that's a course I'd kind of recommend to do. If that interests you, that is. I know a lot of like my other friends, they kind of end up taking like random courses. For example, I think my roommate this coming fall like took studies about the Middle East or something like that, and he really enjoyed it. So yeah, kind of just doing random courses that you kind of interest you is a good idea. There's a really nice UI that I like to go on called UW Flow. You guys can look there and just scroll through courses and be like, this seems interesting as hell, and just yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I'm gonna write that out. UW Flow, agreed. Very great site. I'm actually doing the Middle East course this coming term.
Oh, nice.
There was one called Astronomy, Sci 238. I really like that one. Well, I realized we missed a question.
Oh yeah.
A very subjective question, but what do you guys feel land people a FANG internship? I feel like there's a lot of not luck, but it's things need to sort of align, right? There's a lot of great candidates. Not everyone can get a job. So it really depends. Things that I've noticed sort of help, apply to a bunch of them. Keep applying. You're gonna get rejections. Keep applying. Stuff that'll sort of make you stand out, like on your resume, like try to really focus on making it look good. Talk to upper years, get help. Put like all your accomplishments, past experience, hackathons, projects, things like that. And then try to get um, have a like relationships with the people at those companies, like with the recruiters. Try to like actually talk to them if they talk to you, like really um, uh, really get to know them better. Show that you're interested, show that you're an interesting person, right? You're not just like a coder, like you do other stuff in your life. And then I'd say in terms of the interviewing too, there's a lot of good resources to practice online. There's a website called LeetCode that people talk about. I sort of have a love-hate relationship with it because it's annoying to do. But then there's a really good book that I really loved called Cracking the Coding Interview that I really found super helpful for practicing for interviews. And then another website called Pramp. This might be a bit early if you guys are just starting first year. I only saw these like in third year, but they're cool to look into for sure.
I'd suggest actually like when you guys are first year, second year, to just kind of not spend too much time on this and just kind of, maybe do side projects instead if you really want to kind of beef up your resume kind of stuff. Yeah. And like also side projects are just a lot more fun than just spending all your time doing questions. So yeah. um, yeah.
Just a quick thing, I saw someone's asking, is this recorded? Yes, it is recorded. Yeah. Cool. What's our next question?
Right, where and how can we join in clubs? There's a club fair, like David mentioned before, as well as like each club kind of have their own platform they kind of use. Like I know a lot of them use Facebook or something like that to kind of like kind of send out messages. A lot of other ones kind of might use Discord. Just like search up the club and like if you're confused, just email them. Just like I want to join. How do I do that? Yeah.
They'll be very excited to have you. All clubs are super excited to have more people. So yeah, very true. Okay, recommend doing a specialization along with undergrad. I'm pretty sure UG is undergrad. Yeah, if there's a subject that you really like, definitely, yeah, talk to your academic advisor and be like, oh, I'm interested in doing this. What do you suggest? I know people who are doing like a business sort of specialization or like oh, actually, you know what? I might be confused. I don't know if I'm talking about specializations or like minors. Um,
I mean, I'm minor/specializations. I'm actually doing the digital hardware specialization, and I'd say like it's um, yeah, kind of do it if you're actually interested in it, in the kind of courses you kind of want to take. Like for me, I've always kind of wanted to learn a bit more about hardware because in high school, at least on my robotics team, I was like, I couldn't do any hardware at all and like was just super confused about like, how the hell do computers actually work, right? And so that's why I kind of want to learn a bit more about that, and that's why I kind of did the digital hardware specialization. But in terms of like, if you only want to do it for the flex, or what's the better word? Um, if you only want to do it to kind of like beef up your resume, I'd say it doesn't really help out too much. And yeah, but like kind of really do it if you're interested in it. Because I know like a lot of my friends, they like really love music or something like that, so they're doing a music one. Yeah.
Must be missed another question. Do you think giving time to side projects right from the start will play a big role when applying for jobs? I guess it sort of depends what's on your resume. I didn't have any side projects when I first started applying to jobs. Um, but then I went to hackathons and those sort of became my side projects, like those little things I worked on during those. If you're interested, I'd say, yeah, again, like all these things, if you want to do side projects, if there's something really cool, really interesting that you want to do, for sure, 100% do it, add it to your resume. But if you're just doing it just to do it and you won't enjoy it, like I know if I were to do like spend time on it, like I wouldn't enjoy it, it's not worth it. So that's where Eric and I like it seems like he likes doing these long-term things, and that's great. That's great for your resume and stuff like that. But if you don't enjoy doing it, focus on other stuff that you do enjoy, and then you can add those to your resume.
All right,
Um,
great.
yeah.
What's the next question? Do
Uh,
you already answer? Are you allowed to apply externally on specific company websites and then again through Waterloo
uh,
links?
we haven't answered that, so
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, you should be able to. I don't see why not. Yeah,
yeah, you definitely can. And yeah, sometimes you'll get rejected from one and get an interview from the other.
the
So
other,
yeah,
yeah.
definitely do it. Why not? Unrelated. Acapella. I can take that one. Prior experience. Yes, definitely no prior experience necessary. Um, and there's a lot of different groups. Some of them require auditions. Um, there's one called ACE that I've done a couple of terms. That's really awesome. It's a big group. There's about 60 to 70 people. I'm not 100% sure how things are going, if they're going to be in person or still online. But that one you don't need to audition. Anyway, everyone is welcome. And it's really great time. There's actually a lot of people in computer science there. So that's cool. You can get help with your homework. But yeah, beginners are welcome. They teach you a lot. There's some really talented people that are really interested in helping out. So definitely acapella is great. And join ACE, AAL to ACL, text it. But yeah, beginners are welcome.
All right. What main programming languages should we learn to improve our chances of getting a job? I suggest like, again, kind of like most of the time they're not necessarily looking for specific programming languages, but kind of like just general experience. I'd say like most people who at least up years or people who do have more experience, they like pretty much know all kind of important programming languages kind of stuff. So like, but in general, I definitely suggest, especially for web development, at least know JavaScript. Um, and yeah, I don't know what else to say. Yeah.
Yeah, the cool thing is about programming languages, once you know one of them, the others are like sort of similar, so it doesn't take super long. For jobs, most of the time, they don't like most of my jobs that I've worked in a language, I didn't know that language before I started. I just learned it on the job. Um, I guess for interviews, one that's helpful is Python because it's like super easy to learn, very straightforward, and a lot of people use it. So that's a really good one to have. In your courses, you'll be doing C, C++, Racket, and yeah, like Eric said, JavaScript would be a good one for like web development. I guess those would be good ones to do on your own.
Yeah. Like honestly, like as long as you know C, like you
Oh,
should be fine. Yeah, okay. What's the whole
yeah.
Cali or bus culture at UW? I haven't really seen a lot of this because I'm only heading into second year. But David, do you have more to say about this?
Oh yeah, people always talk about Cali or bust. I guess it depends on your friends, like depend on who you're talking to. I definitely like, yeah, you can focus on that in your fourth year or whatever. But before them, just focus on good co-ops, like cool experiences. Doesn't matter where it is. Um, because it's like I think if you do Cali or bust, you're setting yourself up for failure and for a lot of rejection, for a lot of like sad times. Definitely apply to these Cali jobs. But if you don't get them, like there's plenty of other really great jobs in Canada and in other parts of the US, other parts of the world. So I try to, I guess, stay a bit away from that because it's just setting yourself up for sadness. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
In general as well, like, how do you call it? I'd suggest during university, try setting yourself up for like smaller goals and like success, if that makes sense, right? Like, don't be
Sure.
like there's this huge goal that you have to reach, or else like you're failing. No, like set small goals up to like maybe a larger goal or something like that. Like set yourself up for success.
Cool. Okay, well, I think we skipped a few questions. So we'll get to them now. And just maybe I'll answer a bit less, like quicker, because there's a lot of them.
Yeah,
Co-op student of the year.
speed
That's
running.
every faculty has a co-op student of the year. So your employer, if they really like you, they're going to give you like an outstanding evaluation. They're going to write like a page about you. You also write a page about yourself. Then every year the Waterloo faculty goes through it, and then they're like, okay, this was the best math faculty co-op student of the year. This was the best art student co-op student of the year. And they publish those. There's a lot of people in the math faculty. There's like, I don't know, thousands and thousands. So there's only one person who gets awarded, but it's a cool thing if your company really likes you to get nominated for. Cool. Dating in university. You have any input on that, Eric?
Uh, no experience, so I can't really say much. It like don't worry about it, I guess. It'll happen when it happens. Especially online, it's probably really hard. So yeah.
Yeah, like do it if you want to. Don't do it if you don't want to. I wouldn't spend like, and was that with everything else, like you can spend some time on that, but try not to spend too much time on any one thing that'll like detract from like school or extracurriculars or dating. Like try to have a balanced life. But yeah, there's a lot of people our age, a lot of people dating for the first time or living on their own. So yeah, I'd say go for it. Why not? But don't make that your life.
Like everything in university, balance is key.
Yeah, for sure. AI specialization. Do you know anything about that?
I have no idea. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's
Honestly, you
fine.
can ask your academic advisor um, about it. Yeah, I know a lot of people are aiming for that, and then some people realize once they're in it, they don't love it. So I'd suggest like, especially for AI, you can honestly kind of learn it on your own with like outside external kind of resources. So like maybe try that first, and then uh, I'm not sure about getting in what the requirements are. I assume it's grades because, um, for example, like people who jumped from math to CS, like it's 100, like they only consider grades kind of stuff, and it's usually from the math or CS courses. Yeah.
Cool. Here, I was just looking through the chat and people were asking accomplishments like for your resume. Yeah, put all your accomplishments. Anything in math, anything in tech, anything related to any companies you're applying to. Um, yeah, Chem Olympiad. Yeah, that's incredible. For sure, put it on your resume. And then again, later, once you have like really more specific tech resume experience, you can remove things. But yeah, anything impressive in first year for sure, put it on. Okay, we have a question about your digital
Oh,
hardware. We have two
hardware.
questions about your digital hardware
Oh, two
specialization.
of them? Okay. Let me
Uh,
see
if
one.
it's fun so far, and then the one that was most recently asked.
Okay. If it's fun, I'd say I only had one course, which was Mechatronics 120 at circuits. It was pretty fun actually, like kind of figuring out the building blocks to circuits and stuff like that. But I will say edge courses, they're kind of significantly harder than CS courses, at least for first year. Um, yeah, so like when edge students complain, I guess they do have like some reason to complain about stuff. But I will say as well, like it is kind of fun because it's very well organized, those courses, because they actually give you a checklist already of what you need to do. And like it's very streamlined, if that makes sense. So um, yeah, I kind of enjoy it so far. I have some friends who are also in it, and they're just like, I want to drop this. So it really depends on who you are. Yeah, I like designing, by the way. There's a lot of labs which you don't get in CS, at least like not during first year so far. And if you guys are kind of interested in more of that kind of engineering side of designing stuff, I definitely like kind of suggest digital hardware because it's kind of that stuff. Yeah. Oh,
Awesome.
here's a good question. Do all first year courses require the same amount of effort? Not at all. Um, a lot of electives honestly like require probably only like 6 hours a week or even less depending on it or more. Kind of really depends on what you do. But I'd say like for most of the core courses, like your math 135, 137, they all probably require around the same amount of effort, and that's usually about 10 hours a week. So give or take, yeah. And yeah, Dave, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, definitely around 10 hours a week. I'd say definitely try to put in the time to study it and like do all the assignments. Because doing the assignments, even if they're not worth too much, like even if they're worth percent, I find like those help you study for the final. So those are really good to do. It depends on what you're good at, what you like doing. Some people are really great at just, coding, so they did the computer science assignments really quick. So other people like really like proofs and they're really good at them, so those like take less time. Or it's other people just like don't do the assignments, so obviously it doesn't take time because you're not doing them. But yeah, I'd say yeah, you sort of after a couple of weeks you figure out what takes more time, what takes less time. So I'd say just try to spend a decent amount of time on them, and then you'll sort of figure out what works best for you. Um, I know personally, I think I spend more time on the computer science courses than the math courses, just
Mm.
so because those took me a bit more time to really wrap my head around.
And
Um,
also like I will say like for math courses, it's easy to tell when you're done because you proved it. Whereas CS, you're like you can get partway through, like you can be 90% done, but like not get any of the points on assignment yet, kind of stuff. So it's very like finicky in that way.
yeah,
Yeah.
for
All right,
sure.
here's a good question. Does your resume have to be necessarily one page? Because we both have one-page resumes. I'd say like, at least from what my dad told me, you usually want to keep your resume like short, and so that way like, because I think they usually say they spend like what 10 to 15 seconds looking over your resume kind of stuff. I'm not sure if it's actually that short, but usually it's very fast. So you kind of want to put the key highlights and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think one page for sure in first year, one page. I don't think I'll have a two-page resume until I'm like 10 years into my career. So yeah, focus on one page. I think the university will tell you 2 pages. Pretty much all upper year people in computer science will tell you one page. Because yeah, they take 7 to 10 seconds, I've heard. So, cool. Which to choose between math 135 and 145? I did 135.
I did
That was very
135.
challenging.
Yeah.
145 is very, very challenging because people at the University of Waterloo very smart in math. So if you want to go to the even harder level, yeah. I know a lot of people they did like a couple of weeks 145, then they dropped into 135, and apparently it's not that much easier. Like it's still very challenging. Don't expect like if you're having trouble in 145, then 135 will be way easier. Like they're both challenging. So if you maybe really love math, sure, try out 145, but really don't feel bad if you want to do 135 because they're both very hard.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'd say like David said, it's really just about whether or not you love math and stuff like that. For me, I took like 135, but I took 146, which is the 1B advanced one, and I really love that. So again, it's like it depends on your preference and stuff like that. So if you can always like try 145 first, and then if you realize I don't like this at all, you can always drop to 135.
Yeah. I saw a question about textbooks. If you need them, don't buy textbooks until the first week. Then you ask the professor, which textbooks do I need? Because sometimes you don't need the required ones. So they'll tell you, and then you can get them in first week. How do you get your Google Co-op? A lot of like reading, cracking the coding interview that I was talking about, practicing Pramp, like the website that I sent. It's like to practice interviews, hackathons, putting those on your resume, getting decent grades, just like try to be overall and probably a decent amount of luck. Um, just yeah. But just yeah, if you keep putting the effort, keep applying, something will stick. You can DM me or email me or something if you have more questions.
Last two questions, I guess we should do, right? I feel like an important one is any tips on maintaining mental health while balancing the heavy workload? I feel like that's a really important one because I know a lot of CS students, they don't necessarily do this. They kind of sacrifice sleep and do a lot of other stupid things, in my opinion. But um, like, yeah, talking about that, I'd say number one thing is make sure you get sleep. I know a lot of people like pull all-nighters. Don't do that. I'd say like try to aim for at least 8 hours a night, and yeah, kind of like schedule in breaks. I guess that's kind of my tips. David, do you have more to add to that?
Yeah, sleep is great. Maybe 8 hours is sometimes hard, but at least six, guys. Like
Yeah.
aim for 6, 7, maybe 8. It's definitely not worth it. Like to study all night, like when you show up to the quiz or exam, like you're gonna be too tired. You won't be able to think straight. Yeah, try to do things in advance, for sure, as soon as possible, and then like in increments instead of all at once right before it's due. Mental health, again, like doing extracurriculars, going outside, exercise, talking to people, talking about like your struggles with other people, because everyone is really going through very similar things. Those all helped.
To add on, there are a bunch of excellent resources, like mental health resources that the um, university offers. I think like UW Mates was it, and a few others. There's actually I'm pretty sure on every syllabus there should be some mental health resources that you guys can just like take. And if you ever like wondering where you need to look at, just go there. And also like a bunch of clubs also kind of host a bit of mental health stuff. For example, CSC Club. The reason why I'm kind of promoting a lot of CSC Club is because I'm helping out with them this term. But we have something called Fireside Chats where you guys can come in and just like start talking, and like we kind of talk about our own kind of issues as well, or like struggles. And yeah, I guess that's what I got to say about mental health. Yeah.
Nice. What software did we use? We used I used LaTeX.
I just use Word.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah.
Right. I guess we
Course
should.
notes. Usually they give you course notes, right? In the courses, yeah, they're provided. Yeah, those are definitely helpful.
I guess we should wrap up this meeting
Yeah.
because it's time. I guess we should say thank you guys all for coming out today. We really hope that you guys have a wonderful start to your university career. It's a bit intimidating, but hopefully this helped relieve some stress, kind of get you guys a bit amped up for university. It's a big step, so we're really proud of you guys for like doing something really important, which is just kind of reaching out and kind of, you know, yeah, getting into university, I guess. David, do you have any last words to say?
Nothing in particular. No, thanks again, guys. Questions were great. You kept them coming, and about all sorts of topics. That was awesome. Yeah, definitely. I want to end with what answers best memory so far to Waterloo. I don't know if I have a specific one in mind, but just anything with other people, unrelated to school, like extracurriculars, meeting new people, just like late nights with friends, stuff like that, best memory. So really make sure you focus on that and don't spend all your time studying. Cool. I can add my email.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna add my email too.
Case
So if you guys have any more
people.
questions, just feel free to hit us up. Mine is eric.huang@uwaterloo. Yeah,
Oh, that is not how you write Waterloo. My bad. 1 second.
a 0. Nice.
It's a 0. Don't answer the first.